socks off.
Get your socks off.
I got these thick socks.
Take your socks off and be where you are. It's true that we are at the back of the farm where I grew up. So it's true that you are the one that you've been waiting for. Yes, you are, it's true. So why don't you decide who you will put on the stage and then stand in front of the camera? Dan Vanderwall.
Are we recording now?
Yeah.
Oh, we are? You have a nice voice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was fun. I like to sing because it's the best way to share what is flowing through us and to us. And I wanted to create this message today, and I shared with you beforehand that I feel like what's going on right now is that we are being encouraged to choose. And free will means that we have to call for assistance in order to be assisted, for one. But we also have to understand the other choice that is being asked of us in this humanly field or realm that we live in is the choice to prioritize fear over faith, or vice versa. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs actually best portrays that as the tipping point being between belonging and respect, where we actually choose to not just belong, but to belong where we feel respected and are respected. And so I wanted to introduce this big topic to you as an author of 2 books, someone that was involved in a meditation cult for quite some time, and someone who has traversed the hero's journey, taught abroad, teaching English, fallen in love many times, and, lived your own experience.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on what's been shared as to how it relates?
The hierarchy of needs. The thing with the hierarchy of needs is that you don't. It's a theory until you experience it for yourself. One time I moved into an apartment, and as soon as I was moving in, I discovered there was mold all over the walls, and brought it to the landlord's attention. And he was a person of integrity, so he basically gave me the option. He said, I'll refund all of your money, because I have to take care of all this. They had to waterproof the entire outside of the house. It was a bit. He said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do all this to the house, and you can either take all your money and go, or you can stay. So because he was so integrous about it, I ended up staying. But during that process, my house was like a construction site for I don't know how long, 2 weeks or a month, and it wasn't horrible, but I got to feel like this anxiety that starts to happen when that need is not met. See, we grow up in a society and a world where a lot of the more basic needs are being met most of our lives. We don't know what it's like to really go. Most of us in the West don't really know what it's like to go without food. My landlord's Filipina. She grew up in a world where if you got food that night, you were fortunate. You weren't sure if you were going to or not. So that need is always kind of precarious. It's one of the lower ones, right? And then you notice it. You notice it when you don't have it. Otherwise, you take it for granted. That's what happens. We take it for granted, and we're like, well, and so which is a good in a way, because then we can focus on these higher needs, right? Yeah. I guess something we can draw from that, though, is that politically, people, or philosophically, people will come up with ideas. People that have spent all their time not worrying about those needs will come up with ideas without considering those needs, without considering the ramifications of, let's say, their brilliant ideas on these other more basic needs, especially for other people, right? So I don't really know if we're going to get into politics or not, but we can be very stupid in our thinking when we forget that on a certain level we are still animals living in an animal world, right? So, yeah.
Well, that just goes down to the fact that we live in a cause and effect universe, and there is always the answer there if we are willing to ask the question, to go seeking an answer that wasn't apparent on the surface. And even the word freedom. Are we going to focus on the free side of the spectrum or the dumb side of the spectrum? And when we actually think about what does it mean to be dumb, it means unable or unwilling to express ourselves, which means then we need an elected official to be able to represent us as who we are and then talk for us because we are not deemed capable of doing it for ourselves.
Yeah. The interesting thing about freedom and Maslow's needs is that without freedom, without civil liberty and the whole idea of individual freedom, and the individual being in a sense sacrosanct. So the individual free will is something that Western civilization about something like 5, 6, 7,000 years ago came up with this crazy idea that individuals mattered, right? I think it'd be better with her tied up, but anyway, so speaking of freedom, not for her, so without freedom you can't get to those higher needs. It's not possible. It's very, very unlikely that people living in a tyrannical society will ever reach those higher levels. Some of them will, but very few.
No, of course, there's not room for it.
Right, you need to have freedom. So that's really, in a way, that's kind of sort of what's at stake right now with what's going on in the entire world politically. Is we're looking at losing more freedom. If we lose more freedom, it means that we lose access to those higher levels. Not that we can't get there, but it becomes harder and harder for more and more people to get there.
Yeah. Well, if you think about the structure of a pyramid, there's more room at the foundation for people to be able to stand out on the bottom floor, or the bottom rung. But then to be able to move up a few steps, then you're getting into smaller surface space for people to be able to actually move to. And then the higher that you go at the top eventually, everybody's vying for the top, but there's only room for one on the top of a hierarchy.
Yeah. And there's an idea that hierarchies are wrong and bad. So a communist Marxist way of thinking is that hierarchies are bad, and more of like this idea of a circle of everybody being sort of equal. That's an ideal. That's not how it works in nature. There's always someone on the top. It's not necessarily a competition, but there's always going to be someone who's the best. For example, Usain Bolt was until recently the fastest man in the world. Until recently, he was at the top of that pyramid. Right. It's not that he was holding anybody back down. There has to be one person that's at the top, and then it goes down. As soon as you start artificially trying to bring that down, to even everybody else out, then obviously you end up limiting a lot of people.
Well, I love that you used the word person, because when there can only be one person on the top, that is correct from the perspective of the person's definition being of a trust. And so when we actually break down the definition of a person compared to a man or woman with all rights reserved, there's a difference in power structure. So in the hierarchy of creation, which is like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, God is at the top of the hierarchy. Man and woman are underneath of that, and then you've got government, then you've got courthouses, police, policymakers, persons who are trusts that are traded on the stock market based on the birth certificate registration number. That ultimately, when our parents registered us, not understanding that was what was happening, then we became publicly traded, turning us into persons. which is significant because underneath of a person then is when we've actually got the policies and the employees, the government officials at the very bottom. It's basically the minions, the ones that have to do the bidings of the ones on top.
Yeah.
Except for, if you actually look at it from the transition from the Piscean age into the age of Aquarius, the Piscean age was about hierarchies and power structures being structured the way it's always been, compared to the age of Aquarius actually being about passing the jug of water over, because that's the transition into the age of Aquarius, which is about water being even keel. It's like you can have high and low places when the waves go high, sure, but overall, for the most part,
Keep going. I'm with you.
right?
Yeah.
Right with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
I love it.
I'm just gonna get her on this. So that
You are right with me, my friend. I love it. Dan and I have known each other since 2010, when we were both living in London, me part-time, and you were full-time there. And
I
yeah, so
was in college. Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's the Piscean age conversation is very interesting because what just occurred to me is we could be entering into like such a radically different age that it's really hard at this point. It's really hard to fathom what the heck's going on.
yeah, we have
where
no cells of recognition.
we don't know. It's completely new. We're in a totally different, and that would sort of explain a lot of what's happening, right?
Yeah.
If it's, I mean, everything is happening on an energetic level,
Right.
first and foremost, and then it happens on the political level, the social level, like all these other levels, right? So something major is happening on the on the inner level,
Yeah.
and it's, you know, maybe it is this Piscean age that's finally happening,
Right.
right? But yeah, I just keep coming back to, if that's the case, it's kind of like technology right now. We were talking about this, my dad and I. You have these technological revolutions that are happening at a faster and faster rate.
Right.
And the next big leap. So like let's say 20 years ago, people couldn't really predict. She's getting into stuff.
This is good. She's
Her
distracted.
1-year-old is coming. People that are people 20 years ago couldn't really predict what was going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
With the 5G or 4G came out, and nobody realized that, you know, it would result in Netflix and many other things that happened. You know, the next big technological revolution, nobody's going to. Some things you'll be able to predict, like I think there's going to be a housing revolution, affordable housing, possibly. But other things are going to happen that nobody is going to predict.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening with this era that we're moving into.
Yeah.
The direction that it's going in right now, it is not like we were talking about earlier. It's a dark. It seems like a very dark path.
Could be.
But, you know, and if we go by history, we know where this ends.
Where our patterns have led us
Right,
before.
right. But if it's a brand new era,
If
we
we
really
blaze
don't know.
the trail, then where will we wind up? Is the question we must ask ourselves. So it is the time to tear the fallen branches apart. Branches are words. My friend Paul Fullerton, I rented a room from him in Brantford for a time, and he talked a lot about branches and roots, and how I was working with the branches of words, and I was staying out in all of these acronyms and in the head, and I really needed to refine it down to the roots and figure out the values and the virtues. And that was kind of all going on when I kind of like went over the edge. And then the fearful and the faithful and the faithfully fearful and the fearfully faithful, the fight within me got a little too big on the outside. And I started seeing all the signs, the symbols to reflect what was going on the inside, because it does that.
Yeah.
And it's no problem. I'm just aware that we've got some milkweed, which is
Is that poisonous too?
No, but it's good for the, that's with the monarch butterfly. I've seen quite a few monarch butterflies lately, so I just wanted to make
Cool.
it so it didn't die. I was saying though about going over the edge and the fight between the fearful and the faithful coming out. Are you giving me a sign?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
No.
I wasn't
Not,
sure.
not consciously.
Not consciously? Okay, very good.
You're in a fight.
The fight was on the inside.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was just listening to David Hawkins, and he used to say, if you live alone in a cave, you affect all of humanity by virtue of what you have become spiritually. So there's different ways to affect the world spiritually, and one of them is to sit alone in a cave. She's being a little brat. One of them is
Yeah,
to.
and then you can focus.
I got it. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
I got it. Yeah. So the level of, and this is a question for me, is what level of direct involvement in worldly affairs do I want to have? There's a certain line that you cross when you're really in the fight. You've already crossed that a long time ago. Probably pre-COVID, you crossed that line already.
Yeah.
So, in the line that I'm thinking of, like I haven't really crossed it. There's other things that I'm doing, writing books, and now I'm working on a novel in which you can say things in a subtler way. Like there's a reason why 1984 and Brave New World have not been banned yet, right? But a lot of other books, kind of saying the same thing more directly, are being banned right now as we speak.
Yeah.
So, do I want to be banned, or do I want to write? Do I want to be able to share the message in a subtler way? But the thing is that we need people on all levels. We need the people in caves that have no engagement, because they can get to a high level of consciousness, and that radiates out into the world.
Yeah.
We need people on the front lines, like yourself, and then we need people at other kind of levels in the overall scheme of it.
I got taken off the front lines, Dan, because I wouldn't wear a mask in January.
Well, you still are though, in your engagement, like you're directly, yeah.
I lost my job as a cashier because I wouldn't mask.
Well, I might lose my job because I won't get vaccinated. That's where it's coming to, right? So, and people used to, like, I know.
Not getting vaccinated. It's a GMO jab. It's
Yeah,
inoculated. What does inoculated mean? Be protected from what? Something that you could still catch if you get it.
Yeah.
So you're taking it for herd mentality, herd immunity, and then if you don't get it, you're selfish. But if you don't get it, then you're the one that could die from it.
You're being
So you need to do it for others.
Not a lot of logic.
I just watched that
Yeah.
minute-long banter back and forth between somebody that played both characters.
Oh, that's good.
Which was actually really good, because it was just like, yeah, this makes no sense. You're like fighting about what?
Yeah.
Something that somebody that is given a position of authority says is true, that then we have to say, am I going to feed fear and go towards safety and belonging, or am I going to choose faith and move toward respect and self-actualization?
Yeah. Yeah. It's become for me the jab has become a symbol of authoritarianism. You know, the loss of freedom. Control freaks who. It's almost, it doesn't even matter what it is. Control freaks want you to do what they want you to do.
Right?
And
Narcissists too.
What's that?
Narcissists
They're
too.
narcissists. Well, control freaks are narcissists.
Yeah.
They want you to do it because they want you to do it.
Right.
They want to control you. And so the moment you say no, that just makes them, infuriates them even more, makes them want to control you even more. If vaccine science is correct, there's no reason why they need to get the last 20% of people, right? Just based on their own understanding, their own paradigm.
Right.
If we went by their own paradigm, excuse me.
Now they're saying it's 100%.
Now they want 100%. Why do they want 100%? And it really...
To get rid of everybody that could remember that a war crime was committed against the majority of the population and was written out in the Georgian Guidestones in Atlanta on big tablets that talk about the depopulation agenda.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's that or if it's just a bunch of control freaks that don't even know what they're doing anymore. Because a lot of the thing is a lot of what's happening can also be summed up as mass hysteria.
Yes.
What mass hysteria is basically like a herd, a herd animal, a herd of animals that is in stampede mode. They're not. Nobody's making any rational decision. They're all just going in the direction that they're all going. They don't even know why. Human beings are more sophisticated, so we just.
God forbid the ones that are like, don't.
They're
the
like,
cliff
yeah,
is right behind
you're going
us.
over a cliff. Okay, you're going over a cliff, and they're like, you're the problem.
Yeah,
It's
one's
like, well,
like you. It's like you've seen that meme about the cow diagram, and it's all like sectioned off into the hind legs and the ribs and ribeye steak and like all the sections of the cow, and then it's got like a cow factory or a slaughterhouse in the background with like clearly with like the smoke like with the smoke billowing out of the chimneys to show it's active, and then all of the pen of cows saying that's that cowspirist again.
That's that cow's what?
Cowspirist.
Yeah.
Spirist.
Yeah.
That's making all those assumptions.
Yeah, making all assumptions that this is
what's going to happen
this
to
is
us.
what's happening.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is that a lot of the conspiracy theorists are correct about a lot of things.
It's because there's a big conspiracy.
Yeah. But see, the thing is for me at this point, it doesn't matter how much of the conspiracy aspect of it is true, and how much of the more like herd. What is she doing now? Okay, that's fine. Like, so you have like two different ways of looking at it. Either it's a giant planned conspiracy, or it's a herd animal running over a cliff because it's in fear, or it's a combination of both. But the end result, or the end product of what we're getting, this increased authoritarianism, fear, control, and all that stuff, is it doesn't matter. That's what we're getting. So whether it's like, for example, when I go to I work in the school board. When I go to like the last year when I worked in schools, it seemed like I was working in a communist state. Right. It looked like a communist state. Felt like, as far as I can tell, I've never lived in Russia. I've never lived in Soviet Russia, but it felt like a modern day. Stop. It felt like a modern day communism.
Right.
It looked like a modern day communism. Now, was it actually communism? I'm not sure. I don't know. But it sure felt a lot like it. And so when things start to really feel a lot like, for example, Nazi Germany, 1938, 1939. Not exactly, but it just has more and more of those aspects that make it like that. Whether or not it's coming from the same place is sort of irrelevant. It's actually becoming that. It's following the same sort of pattern. But yeah, like we were saying earlier, one of the things Scott Adams is an out-of-the-box thinker. You might like him, and he says the idea that history repeats itself is incorrect. That's not true. History never really repeats itself. It's always changing. There's always something new. So to assume that history always repeats itself is sort of like it's like a lazy assumption in a way. Certain aspects do, but we're in brand new, like we're in familiar waters, but we're also in brand new waters. Yeah, so it's good to always keep that in mind, right? Otherwise, we limit ourselves to repeating, just going down the same road.
Yeah.
Right?
Plowing the field, literally, what's happening right now beside us, and so you got bees floating all around pollinators, and it's that remembrance about the fact that we can either be reactive or creative. We can either feed the fear or the faith. We can either feed the political side of what's going on, or we can actually turn it inward and see how we are leading ourselves. Mm-hmm. So tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wayne Peters with What's Up Canada and Ethics Over Fear is hosting Doctors Talks, where 3 Canadian doctors are speaking out about the truth from a scientific perspective. Very valuable conversation. Yeah. And that is actually a meeting I'm going to be streaming. Well, I'm not going to stream it. I'm going to Zoom meeting the stream with Chuck Black with freedomforumcanada.com. So you're welcome to join for that experience Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Thursday at 5:55 Eastern Standard Time, p.m. not a.m. That is when We're going to be gathering for Empowering Leaders of Self. It's a mastermind group to really help us stay focused on us despite distractions that are around potentially, and how to stay strong even when others would pull us off course or try to say that that's not true or that we can't. So that's happening on Thursday, and then at 8, bless me.
Bless you.
Yeah, bless this experience too, because at 8 p.m. Thursday, the Human Aura, chapters 11 and 12 will be read. So that's the next experience. And then there's something happening later on that week as well.
Yeah.
So, you got anything you want to?
Well, I just want to emphasize the value of freedom. You know, there's a saying, live free or die. And I believe in that, because if you don't have freedom, you might as well be dead. There's a lot of movies that are kind of coming true, either literally or sort of symbolically. And I think the movies about the zombie apocalypse, it occurred to me that that's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that are becoming zombies, and that they will not think for themselves
Mm-hmm.
at all. They will not seek the truth,
Mm-hmm.
and they will very, very quickly throw their next door neighbors under the bus,
Mm-hmm.
like literally. Yeah, we're living it, and but it's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's the beginning. So it's like, I think this time is an opportunity to see what's really important at the end of everything,
Yeah.
and I think freedom is at the very top
Yeah.
of my pyramid of what's
For sure.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine as well. And the biggest realization for me, based on some choices that I've made recently with some relationships, is that I value respect more than belonging.
Right.
I value self-actualization, which is what it means to be free,
Mm-hmm.
more
Yeah.
than belonging, where I don't fit in and am not welcome or wanted. It's like,
Yeah.
don't go where you're not
Yeah.
appreciated. Go where you are seen. You know, it's just like, if you're not appreciated, go somewhere you would be.
Yeah, and there are people out there that will welcome you. It seems like there's this dividing going on between these two classes. I wish it didn't have to be that way, but it seems like it does have to be that way for whatever reason. So yeah, maybe we need to just embrace it and go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Peaceful Inner Warriors United is an initiative that I spearheaded with acronyms for each of those letters that will be explained in a 3-part video series that Josh Furman is working on editing right now, so that we can get the videos out, and in September start a special practice that is actually going to help us honor all of who and whose we are. So definitely please make sure that you are subscribed. ljeh.ca is where you can come to find out more information about Peaceful Inner Warriors United. Dan Vanderwolf has 2 books. Willingness to Love was the first, and then Was Jesus a Liberal or Conservative? That is the question. Very fascinating, and he's writing more, so definitely stay connected to Dan. He's going to be on some of the upcoming summits and opportunities that we'll have. Make sure that when things get noisy in your environment and you could get upset because things are not exactly the way that you wish that they were, that you give yourself permission to continue on and to trust that everything is happening exactly as it's meant to. And we are all in this together, so we really need to make sure that we are honoring everyone's experience.
Yeah.
So thank you for contributing today, Dan.
Thanks so much for having me. Good to see you.
You too.
God bless.
You too.